You've tuned in to the most crazy rocking metal podcast on the air. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metal from the Inside.
Everybody, welcome to episode 18 of the Metal from the Inside podcast, hosted by yours truly, Sydney Taylor. Thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode and joining me for another week. I hope you guys have been well over the course of the past 2 weeks and that you guys are enjoying the last few days of summer that we have left, obviously staying social distant, of course. These past couple weeks have been pretty eventful for the site if you've been keeping up. I have some brand new interviews available for you guys at www.metalfromtheinside.com, and I was recently interviewed on the Hook Rocks podcast by my good friend Jay Scott. We chatted about how I found my passion for the rock and metal world and just rock and roll's place in my generation and younger generations and generations to come in the future. It was such an insightful conversation about new music, old music, and kind of everything in between, buying physical copies, streaming, all of those fun topics. So if you're interested in listening, you can look up the Hook Rocks podcast. The podcast is available on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts and pretty much anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. So if you are interested in hearing some more from me, be sure to check out that episode. It's entitled The New Generation of Rock and Roll, and again, that's on the Hook Rocks podcast. So if you do listen, let me know what you think. Be sure to tweet me. I love to carry the conversation on. You guys know how I roll. But I am back this week with a brand new interview for you guys for this week's episode of the Metal from the Inside podcast. This week, I am bringing you a chat with vocalist and frontman Keith St. John, who has worked with a wide variety of artists over the years, including Montrose. He was in Gunzo with Tracy Guns. He also has been a vocalist for Lynch Mob and so many other bands. He is currently the frontman and vocalist for bands Burning Rain with Doug Aldrich. I'm sure you are all very familiar with that group, as well as Kingdom Come. So aside from working with some legendary groups and artists, Keith is also a songwriter, producer, and he is currently working on his very first solo record that we actually discuss in this week's interview. So if you are interested in that, please keep listening because we go really in depth on Keith's new solo record that has no release date at the moment, but again, listen in and you will find out more about that. But Keith does so much and it was such a blast getting to sit down and talk to him about it all. Keith and I have had numerous conversations over the years and it's always really great to sit down and speak with him. But before we hop right into the interview, as always, I'm going to fill you in on everything that's going on in the hard rock and heavy metal world over the course of the past couple weeks. 30 years ago today, Judas Priest released the record Painkiller. This record was released September 3rd, 1990, and Judas Priest definitely released a record that was heavier, more aggressive, and was up to bat with popular thrash bands at the time like Megadeth and Anthrax. This record was received so well and is often high in fans' favorite records from the band. I love this record, but personally, I rank some of the earlier Priest classics higher in my list, but be sure to let me know what your favorite track from Painkiller is, and be sure to give that record a spin this weekend as we celebrate its 30th anniversary. You can't go wrong with Judas Priest and especially Painkiller. Next up, although these guys aren't metal per se, I always want to highlight newer groups that are absolutely killing it, and especially bands within the rock genre that I genuinely love. The Struts just came through with a brand new announcement yesterday that they're releasing their third studio record entitled Strange Days. The title track features Robbie Williams, a British pop icon, and they actually released the first track from the record last week entitled Another Hit of Showmanship. This track actually features Albert Hammond Jr. from the band The Strokes. You guys may be familiar. The record is set for release on October 16th. I'm so excited to see what this band is going to bring to the table. They always bring their A-game with their records, and I'm so excited to see what this record is going to be like. So to all of my fellow classic glam rock lovers, be sure to keep an eye out for this record because I know it's going to be right up your alley. Be sure to look out for Strange Days from the Struts on October 16th. On a sadder note, last week we tragically lost frontman and vocalist for the fantastic thrash metal band Power Trip, Riley Gale. The news came out as such a shock to everyone in the metal community, but despite the tragedy of losing Riley, it was so amazing to see the thrash metal community and the metal community as a whole come together to honor and remember this incredible person person and amazing musician, frontman, vocalist, and everything in between. So the hits just keep on coming in 2020. We've lost so many incredible people this year, on top of the intense and uncertain craziness that we've all been experiencing. So it's really tragic to hear about the loss of Riley, but his music will be remembered forever. Power Trip is definitely one of the most iconic modern day thrash bands that have come out of the last 20 years, and it's really, really tough to watch that happen and to see the loss of Riley. So be sure to blast some Power Trip and keep Riley's memory alive. I know so many of you are doing so, and I will be doing the same. That's just a little bit of what's been going on in the hard rock and heavy metal world over the last couple of weeks. As always, stay updated at www.metalfromtheinside.com on the news tab. Here we post all of the most recent press releases and rock and roll news, so you can stay up to date there and be sure to be the first to know about everything that's going on in the hard rock and heavy metal world. But I'm very excited to have you guys listen to this week's interview with vocalist and frontman Keith St. John, again of the bands Burning Brain, Kingdom Come, and also formerly of Montrose, Lynch Mob, and so many more. We discuss a lot over the course of this interview, including what's been going on in Keith's life over the course of quarantine and the entire COVID-19 crisis. We also talk about the launch of his very own face mask company that he started in the wake of COVID-19, entitled Rock and Roll Face Masks. His designs are actually pretty epic, and we go into depth on this in the interview as well, but be sure to go ahead and check that out if you're looking for some rock and roll face masks to represent your personality a little bit more. We talk about the Kingdom Come live stream that's happening this Saturday, September 5th from the Monsters of Rock Studios in LA. We go in depth about the live stream process and what it's like to perform without an audience. We speak about some of Keith's most recent work, like I mentioned before, the writing of his new solo record that has no release date yet, as well as his work on Ron Coulin's most recent record. He did a lot of vocal work and songwriting on that project, so Keith gave us a little bit of insight on how his collaboration with Ron came to fruition, and we talk about so much more. It was such a great conversation that I really think you guys are going to enjoy. One last thing before I let you guys go free to listen to my interview with Keith St. John, I want to let you guys know that the Metal from the Inside podcast is now streaming on YouTube. I've been taking the Zoom approach for some of my interviews, and instead of just using the audio, I decided that I would also add a visual component to the podcast, so you can go ahead and watch the very first YouTube video for the Metal from the Inside podcast. Right now, we are on YouTube at the same handle that we are here at Metal from the Inside. Be sure to go ahead and check out episode 17 with Kane Roberts. Also, this episode is going to be on YouTube as well, so you'll be able to watch my conversation with Keith St. John if you prefer to listen to it that way. So be sure to go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, give some of the videos a like if you feel so obliged, and enjoy the videos. I really hope that this is an exciting thing and that you guys enjoy watching them as well as just listening to them. You can kind of pick and choose how you want to experience the Metal from the Inside podcast. So thanks to everyone who subscribed to the YouTube channel so far and has watched the very first video podcast I've done, and there is a lot more to come. As always, stick around at the end to hear one last message from me, but without further ado, I won't keep you guys waiting any longer. Here is my conversation with frontman and vocalist Keith St. John. Welcome back to the Metal from the Inside podcast. I'm Sydney Taylor, and I'm here with this week's guest, vocalist and songwriter for bands like Kingdom Come and Burning Brain, Keith St. John. And Keith has been in a wide array of projects over the course of the years, including being in bands like Lynch Mob, and he also was in some renditions of Tracy Gunn's LA Guns and also Montrose, most importantly. So Keith and I have done interviews over the years, and I'm so happy to have him on the podcast. So how are you doing this evening, Keith?
I am doing so great, Sydney. I couldn't be happier.
Yes, we're so happy to have you on. I know you have a lot going on that we wanted to talk about tonight that you've been working on during the craziness of this year. And first off, I just want to ask you, how have you been doing during just the craziness that's been 2020? I know that, the year started off pretty good for you. As always, you do the Ronnie Montrose Remembered show at NAMM every year. So you luckily got to do that show. Still, it didn't get cut off, but I know pretty soon after that, kind of everything went to shit, for lack of a better term. So how have you been, and kind of what has this time period looked like for you?
Well, after the Ronnie Montrose show, then I still had some shows in February. I did the Monsters of Rock cruise, and both Burning Rain and Kingdom Come were on that show. So I kind of was having a really busy couple of months. And we had a lot lined up for Kingdom Come this year. Our new agent really set up 2020 to be our bust out year. You know me, Sid. I'm an Aries, and, it's like, okay, things changed. Okay, I'm over here. I don't really internalize that kind of stuff so much. I know when it comes back, he'll set up the same plans, and we'll get on some of those great festivals. We were going to play Sweden Rock, which I've never played before, which is a huge rock festival in Europe. I don't know if you've ever been. GNR was the headliner in front of us, so it was a big gig. I'm not crying over spilt milk. I'm just saying it was a busy year.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I'm dealing with the COVID thing. Everybody is. I'm certainly not happy that it happened, but I am happy that I got to catch up on all these recording projects I kind of had stacked up that I was like lame and not getting to, and it was taking me too long to finish a lot of things I was working on. So for me, and I think for a lot of other artists, it's been a little bit of a breath of fresh air to get out of the, sort of the robotic touring season stuff and just be able to be more creative and tour, which is probably what everybody did when they were younger. So,
Right.
We spent a lot more time, writing new material and being experimental. And, I've met a lot of new artists and started working with other recording artists, which I wouldn't have started working with probably if I was out playing. So in a lot of ways, I got to say, there's some things that have translated into positives on my end. Like I said, nobody's happy that what happened, and I wish it would all go away. I did start a face mask company when this whole thing started called Rock and Roll Face Mask.
I saw that. I was actually going to ask you about that because I was like, it's such a great idea because I haven't really seen too many people coming out with like designs that like, I don't know, like the rock community is really into. And I saw you get on that and I was like, yes, because you came out with some really cool like designs and patterns and stuff like that.
Well, I wasn't even expecting to talk about it. And, I should have brought some masks and stuff to show. But as I was thinking about what to say about COVID-19, I was looking over here on the table next to my cup of tea, and I saw this, and I thought, well, either way, some people really dig this mask, man. They just want to go to the grocery store with that on.
Yeah, that's how everybody feels right now. So
the F-COVID, F-2020 thing. I'll tell you a story about that mask. Somebody ordered one of these masks, and we've never gotten very many complaints. Everyone's been so just like overwhelmingly like gushing with like, you're so great and this is so awesome. And this one lady like started sending this text and I'm like, geez, what's she complaining about? She said the FUCK and the 2020 was missing, like some of them were missing off her mask. So I had to send him another one because there wasn't enough profanity on her. So
yeah, she needed it all to just be there.
Yeah. And I said, how did that go out, man? Sorry, man. Our bad, man. I missed it. I wasn't there for that one. But, you just do what you do. Sometimes, I don't know if it's artist types or just different personality styles. It's like, okay, they told us that we were shutting down. And I heard that in China, they were using masks. So I was like, okay, well, we're not doing those tour dates. Let me make some masks and see what happens.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people, not, just in the rock community, but just in general, kind of go for it. And honestly, it's a great idea. It's a great business to get into right now because everybody needs them. And like, especially the designs that you were doing, I haven't seen a lot of people doing designs that like, I feel like I'd personally wear. I want a cool mask. So I saw that and I was like, that's awesome.
I hear you. And just since we're talking about it, I will do a plug now. I just got in, I get custom fabric made. So stuff is printed into the fabric. And I just got a whole bunch of band type of stuff in. That's going to be really great for the rockers and the Monsters of Rock cruise people. And I'm not going to say what we got, but go check out the website, www.rockandrollfacemasks.com. And, there's a couple of great Zeppelin masks and stuff like that, so, and other stuff. Anyway, I didn't intend to come on and plug that.
Oh no, plug away, plug away. This is the platform to do it on because, a lot of people who are listening to this are interested in that. So, but no, I think it's really great that you've been taking some more time to work because when this all happened, for you guys, I'm sure that it was kind of like you said, a little bit of a relief from having to go from show to show to show show or worry about the next thing or have to record something while you're out doing another thing. It was kind of a period to kind of just relax and kind of take the time to actually work on stuff that you didn't have the time to.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Maybe I was always like that, or maybe I've just learned over the years, no matter what happens, you try to just toss it into the positive hat and take life as a positive all the time.
Right.
You can't really fight the tidal wave, you just got to swim with the tidal wave and go, okay, I'm here now.
It's something too that I've been trying to learn as this process has gone, is that, we can't change it. We just have to, like you said, it's happening. We kind of just have to go with it and do what we can while we're going through it. So
absolutely.
You guys have obviously done a couple of live stream shows, Kingdom Come has for the Monsters of Rock cruise. You guys filmed that out in LA.
Kingdom Come is coming up.
Yes, and you guys have the pay-per-view show that's happening in September as well that you guys just announced. So tell me a little bit about that, because I'm sure it must be very different from the shows you guys normally do, because there's no audience and you're singing to a camera. So what is that kind of like?
Well, maybe for some guys it feels different when you're in the studio and there's cameramen and a crew running around. But for me, I'm just, maybe I sort of have a little bit of a quarter of a spiritual brain or something. And I still feel like I feel the audience, and I don't feel like there's no audience. As a matter of fact, I'm sitting there, giving everyone speeches like there's a much bigger audience. This is a huge audience, guys. So, whatever you have to do, close your eyes, visualize it, because there's really a lot of people tuning in, guys. And it's true, because the shows are a lot less, they're rarer. Instead of doing 50 shows around to a bunch of different towns and people can, a few hundred people can come out here, maybe 1,000 there, you're playing to 40,000 one time. So I think that's tough. It's tough when you're used to going through a certain warm-up phase. A musician gets on stage, or a singer or a drummer or whatever, and it takes a couple songs just to kind of get the vibe going and wake up from, being on the bus and all that stuff. And everybody has their way that their body just kind of acclimates to the situation. So the only thing about getting in the studio and shooting it live, where there's really no way to cover it up, is that you got to turn on just from the first second. Because usually I think at those kind of shows, everybody, whether it's pay-per-view or just a free stream, everyone just wants to be there at the beginning. And you know how people are on the internet, when you have other channels you can just switch to really quick.
Right.
If you get bored early, you might just leave. So my thing is like, just start out with whatever you do, start out with a bang, man. Just pick whatever the best stuff is in the beginning and just get it going. But the way that stuff came about is because I was in touch with the owner of Monsters of Rock from having 2 bands on this year's cruise. There was a lot for me to do and sort of some special scheduling for me to organize. So we were a little bit more in touch, me and the owner and some of his guys. So when that started, he contacted me. I was contacted and asked about the bands, and neither of Burning Rain or Kingdom Come is 100% in town in LA, and that's where their studio is set up. Right. So I was like, it'd be complicated because guys would have to fly in. I'm not too sure. I said I do this Ronnie Montrose thing every year at NAMM, which plenty of guys are around LA. At least, a good third of the guys live in this town. And I could get some guys and organize it. And he was all into that. And that's how it started. Here we are doing my 3rd one, which is on September 5th. It's Kingdom Come. We've got new music as the 5 of us because of legalities right now. So, but I don't know when we'll be able to actually release a record. But this material that we have now will be on it. We may just play 1 new song. We may play 2. We mostly want to stick to the old hits for this broadcast. And this is, other than the cruise, this is going to be the band's only gig of the year. And
yeah, a lot of pressure on this one. It's the only one.
Yeah, and I've got to, I've tried to be the cheerleader, to get the guys out from the East Coast. One guy's in Jacksonville, Florida. For them, they're the kind of guys that aren't as involved in the social media and all that stuff and everything. So us LA guys, me and James and Rick, are really trying to get the whole thing together on our own. Have those guys fly in, do a quick rehearsal, and then go. And hopefully it'll be a stellar show. I'm looking forward to it.
I love the live stream shows that have come out of this because, like you said, there's not a lot going on. So when they do pop up, you're very quick to want to go see them. But yeah, I saw that you had done a couple of them, and I love that Monsters of Rock cruise is kind of still doing this and supporting them and, doing that. But I talked to Rudy Sarzo about the live stream shows as well. He did one with Steel Panther, and it's funny, he said something very similar about how he almost didn't even really feel a lot of difference when it came to the audience either. So I think that's really interesting. You said the same thing.
I think Rudy's a really spiritual guy, and he's very empathetic as far as like feeling the crowd and feeling the space and all that. I think we share that a little bit. And I love Rudy. He lives like 1.5 miles from here, and and even so, I wish I saw him more often. But he's a busy guy all the time. As well, when I talk to a few people that are usually recording, that are musicians or writers and stuff, they kind of say, well, it's kind of business as usual, because I'm in the studio a lot. And, if you write a lot and record a lot, you're used to kind of being isolated. You get a lot of artist types who are already a little bit germaphobes and stuff. So they kind of don't even mind wearing a mask and carrying around the alcohol spray. Now they can use it.
But yeah, I had no idea that you guys were doing a new record for Kingdom Come. I had no idea. Is it not a record yet?
It's not that we're doing a new record. It's just that in all this time together, we've been working together. We've come up with tunes and we've jammed them, and we've we've got stuff. I know both Danny Stagg and JB Frank have some other stuff of their own too. They've been writing to throw in the pot. And then, between James and me and Rick, I got together with Rick last night. I kind of get together with him on a regular basis here and there, and we write stuff. So we've got a bunch of material. It's just a matter of, I guess we're not thinking about what to do with it until we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we go, kind of looks like May of 2022 we'll be able to play. So maybe let's release this for example.
Right.
There's nothing official. Of course, we're creative guys. We've got what we feel are great ideas. So, we'd love to be able to come out with it. And there are some legalities because of the ownership issues of the name and whatnot. So we'll see how that plays out. That's all I can hope for on that one.
Whenever it comes to be, however, I'm sure that we're all going to be looking forward to listening to it. But I know you've been doing some other writing as well. You were a guest on another record that came out this year with Ron Coolin, which I know George Lynch was on as well. What was the process of getting involved in that record and, just that collaboration as a whole?
Oh, let's see. Well, that came about around a little more than a year ago. I was actually on an acoustic tour, just me and Doug Aldrich in Europe. And we had a date or two in Holland, because that's where Ron Coolin is from. And he happens to be a fan, and he came to the show, and I met him. And he was one of those guys that was kind of just trying to be helpful. Hey, can I arrange this for you guys or help you with, get you from A to B? Because when you're going around Europe just as an acoustic duo, the travel is very, you're on a train, then you're on a plane, then you're on a bus, then you're in a car, then you're on a bicycle. But and Ron actually gave us a lift somewhere to somewhere, maybe from like an airport to a ferry, and we got to talk. And at that point, when we were over there, he hadn't asked me about doing anything with him. I didn't even know he was he was an artist. And once I got back home and the dust cleared, then he very respectfully called and asked if I wanted to sing a couple of songs, maybe a song or two on his record. And he hired me. And in that process, in our communications, I offered a little bit of writing input and writing services. I said, hey, I really like this song. I feel like if you let me unleash a little bit on these verses, and just put my own, my own style into it, might work with your song. And he said, okay, yeah, send it over. So I did. And then he really liked that stuff. And then that became the thread to keep on feeding me with more songs. So eventually, I don't know, I did probably more than half the record. We did some rewrites, and he knew I had a history with George. So he actually asked me if I could, pursue George a little bit to get him to play on a track. And I'm pretty sure George played on a track I sang on. So yeah, that's what happened. He's a great guy. I mean, he's an artist. He plays all instruments. He's never been in a big band, but he gets it. He gets that. I hate to say it, but he gets that 80s, kind of rock writing style. And I kind of dig a lot of that. So, worked out pretty easy. And then I have some older influences of like Free and Zeppelin and The Who and all that, which always comes into my stuff. So he liked that too. And yeah, man. One more note about Ron Coolin is he's a conscientious guy. And I was attracted to him because of that. One of the first songs we wrote, I was surprised because he just sent me the song. He didn't say anything to me about it, but it was called Paradise. And as I was going through the lyrics of the song, I'm going, man, what the hell is he singing about? There's death and there's tragedy in here, and it's called Paradise. And then I finally got it. I was like, oh, he wrote a song about Paradise Cove, the fire where the whole town got wiped out and stuff. Kind of like, we shouldn't forget, kind of a song, just, what happened, and this is a terrible tragedy. And then he had another song on the record that was about the shooter in Vegas. Remember the shooter from the window, that news? And I was like, wow. And if it wasn't kismet enough, I actually talked to a friend of mine, Ian, great guitar player from LA, who I hadn't talked to in years. And when I talked to him, I was just catching up, shooting the shit, and he just told me he was in that parking lot and he actually got tagged by a bullet.
Oh my God.
I don't know if there's any connection there, but for my life, it always seems to be kismet. It's like I just had done that song with Ron, and then I talked to Ian, and how much of a needle in the haystack is that?
That's something that, when it happened, obviously was crazy news, but now, I mean, it's not a topic of conversation that comes up very often. So yeah, no. I could imagine that was kind of creepy, a little bit like kismet for sure.
What happened is Ian, he like transitioned from rock into country. He always had a sneaker for country music, and he was always listening to it. And then he finally, I hadn't been in touch with him for years because he just kind of finally quit the whole rock scene and went country, right? And I asked him, if he went out, if he was playing country, was with a band and stuff. And then there happened to have been another incident at a country bar up in the valley. And I said, hey, did you hear about that incident? Were any of your friends in that country bar? And he goes, no, but I was at that hotel in LA when that shooter started opening fire. And I just finished that song, and I was just like, holy shit. Way off topic, I'm sure. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I just love the look of your album collection because it's got that nice worn out look to it. Like they're all originals, like my dad's records used to look. And I'm happy that you have Zeppelin 4 proudly displayed.
I kind of changed it out. I got this shelf is like, it fits records perfectly. It's just the right size. And so I kind of changed them out. I have like my turntable up here. You can't see it. Then I have like a CD player, and I have like my speakers, and it's like all like in one place. And I love my records. I feel like, in my opinion, it's probably to me, it is the best format that you can listen to music. In my opinion, Eddie Trunk would say otherwise, but I think that vinyl is the best, so.
Oh, it absolutely is, and we're going to have to talk to Eddie about that, because digital is digital. It looks like that, and it will never be that for you techies who know what I'm talking about. It's truncated, it's cut off. It can't be it'll never be the real sine waves. It can't be.
Forget who I was talking to about this, but I always just like the originals because, especially albums, I think it's a little bit different for music that's made, now. It's being put together digitally, you know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit different. But if I'm buying a record from 1972, I want it to be, that's how the record was meant to be played, like on vinyl. It was pressed on vinyl. That's how it was meant to be played. Everything off of the vinyl is just a replication. That's not how it was made. So it sounds decent on digital, but like it's never going to be the way that it was meant to be played. Like Led Zeppelin 4 was never meant to be played on my iPhone. It was meant to be played on a 33 record. Yeah. So that's how I look at it. And I also, it's just better. Vintage is always better. It's always cooler. So.
Oh, big time. I'm lucky enough that for my last birthday, somebody bought me a turntable. Because I was like, yeah, I sold mine a while ago. And then one showed up on the steps. I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. So now I found some old records in the basement because I sold most of them at yard sales. But even though I've got my groove going back with it, I definitely want to add at least one record to your collection. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll have to talk.
Let me know. I will take any record. No, I just love collecting them. I just think it's I don't know. And it's funny because it kind of just started by accident. I think the first record I got was Alice Cooper's School's Out, but it's the only copy of that record that I've ever found, because when the record came out, he put like the paper panties over the record. It was like,
right.
It ended up going out because the panties were like flammable, so they had to take it off the record. First record I ever bought was that record, and it had the panties on them, and I've never seen that on any other copy of that record, so it was like a fate thing for sure.
Yeah, you got to hold on to that record no matter what. There are a lot of albums, especially from the late 60s and the 70s that had similar, whether it was like they had to change the cover or they could only put that cover out in a certain country and couldn't put it out in the US or whatever. There are all these rare records, and they're the kind of music that you would like, that I think you're into too. And I'm sure you found some things.
Yeah, there's definitely some, and I've never seen that on any other record. Like I go record shopping constantly, and I've seen that record, and I look every time just to see if I'll come across it again, and I haven't seen one since. I'm gonna hold on to the record. I look at it, and I'm like, those panties are 50 years old. They're like yellow. I'm like, that's insane. Like how they've like just traveled this entire way, and they haven't ripped or like.
And no one's worn them yet.
They're like paper granny panties around this record. It's hilarious.
You've got to put them in like a vacuum tube or something to keep them from disintegrating, right? Otherwise, they just like, completely disintegrate.
They're gonna like turn you to like ash in my hands.
Maybe you can get him. Maybe you can go over to Russia and get them to put him in Lenin's tomb with him, because he doesn't disintegrate, right? He's like,
yeah, you can still go. I'm pretty sure
forever.
You can still go, and he looks the way he did when he died. So if we just put those panties in his tomb, they will last forever.
Talk to Alice about that one. Maybe he can get that done. Alice, I mean, he's got connections.
He probably could. Believe it or not, he was friends with Dolly. He could.
If anyone could do it, yeah.
It would be him.
He was friends with Dolly?
Yeah, you never heard about the he did a hologram with him. He was like the first ever hologram that was ever done, and it was of Alice Cooper, and it was Salvador Dali who did it. And
it's crazy.
It's this crazy freaking hologram that's like Alice holding like a brain, and it has ants crawling on it that spell Alice. It's crazy. So yeah, he was friends with Dolly, so I believe that he probably has connections to everything.
Just FYI, I just got a call about my uncle from my dad, because he's having marriage issues, and I haven't heard from this uncle in a long time. But I used to see him all the time when I was a kid, and he used to work for Salvador. He did a lot of the sculpting work, because he was good with his hands. So Dolly had a lot of sculpting things that he did, and a lot of them had to be replicated. So my uncle worked with him on that stuff a lot.
That's crazy. Look, what a weird connection.
We're connecting things. Now we're doing it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah,
we've got the hair, we've got Dolly.
We've got the records, the hair, Dolly. It's just all going together.
Things are adding up.
But yeah, no, that's crazy. I feel like I don't think I've ever known anybody who's ever worked with Dolly. It feels like he's such like a mystical person, you know what I mean?
I know. It surprised me. Only Uncle Michael, you know. Here's my dad's older brother, right? And he was just one of these guys. He still lives in the same apartment in Manhattan and probably has rent control. I remember being kids, and it was one of those places you'd go into. Now, he had my aunt, and they had 4 kids, and they lived a full life and had a full place, but there were paintings and artwork in every direction that you could see. You know, my parents weren't like that. They were more just sort of regular, go to work, kind of in the box people, but always wanted to go to Uncle Michael's because there was so much art laying around, like paintings from, you know, just special stuff, because he was a collector and a trader. And then he also had skills. Like I said, he did some work and some sculpting. And his wife, my aunt, was a viola player. And she used to play at, you know, Lincoln Center and all kinds of cool places in New York City. So I had a sort of artistic family, but it was in this whole classical other realm.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of people I've heard have a classical kind of background. Like when you said that, the first person I thought of was like Randy Rhoads, who was trained to be a classical guitar player, and he listened to classical music, and then he was Randy Rhoads. Like I feel like a lot of the classical music, I've even heard people say that just fans of classical music, it's kind of like the way kind of rock makes you feel, just on the opposite side of the spectrum. So I think they're definitely tied in a way, for sure.
They're really tied. And I was thinking in my head before, I'm going to add an album to your collection. Don't be offended if it's like the 1812 Overture, like, you know, by some original pressing from some amazing orchestra playing it, because those instruments especially are so, you know, there's no electronics even in the front end, like an electric guitar. So, I mean, you really, really hear the difference between the digital recording and the old analog. It's like, oh God, yeah.
I think I was watching Metal Evolution, which was that documentary by Sam Dunn. It was like one of the first metal documentaries that was ever done. And I remember somebody saying in that documentary that if like Beethoven was around in 1980, he probably would have been an Iron Maiden fan or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is very true, because you think about it, and I mean, like a lot of people, don't associate Iron Maiden with Beethoven. But when Beethoven was a composer, he was writing some pretty aggressive stuff for being Beethoven. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely.
I think it's 100% true. You probably would be a giant Iron Maiden fan.
You will. Beethoven kind of crossed over from the classic period to the romantic period
Right.
in classical music, and he was, I think, the only really big composer that was part of two eras, which my thing was the romantic era. You know, I'm a sucker for all the Russian composers, you know, the really dynamic stuff. And, you know, the way I kind of write and rock is from dynamics and rhythms, which is kind of like, you know, Shostakovich and Tchaikovsky and all those guys, you know, that's what they really like, all the drama. Give you a perfect example in rock. I mean, Led Zeppelin songs are all super dramatic from that first.
Orchestras in the background, you know, like so many of their tracks have that in the back.
You know, the first Zeppelin thing I heard was Zeppelin 1. And the second tune on the record was Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, I think, comes right after Good Times, Bad Times. And it draws you in, and it's this nice little acoustic kind of dirge. And all of a sudden, wham, you know,
It hits you.
Plant screams, and the band comes in. It's really dramatic. It's like that style of classical music.
Definitely.
You know, it goes from really quiet to like really hitting you hard. And a lot of people maybe don't think of classical music that way, but the kind I like is that way.
I look back, you said like the 1812 Overture and things like that. And I've gone and seen a few symphonies. There's a big hall here in Philly, and it's called like the Kimmel Center, and they have like their own house orchestra and everything. And I've gone to a couple of symphonies, and I 100%, I like goes from that very, very soft to like, it reminds me of rock music in a way that I feel like a lot of people don't really associate it with, but it does. It goes from like the soft and like the melodic to super heavy and back to the soft. And you see that formula in a lot of different rock genres, you know, whether it's the 80s metal or the classic, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's kind
Absolutely.
of interwoven between those different genres.
Oh, absolutely. You know, speaking of Tchaikovsky, the 1812 Overture was in legend. The first time it was performed and how it was meant to be performed is as they do that outro piece, and it's the fanfares going nuts. It's with cannons. There's live cannons that are going off while they're playing that. And when I first saw that AC/DC record with the cannons on it, I'm like, those guys get it.
Inspired.
In my mind, they were inspired by that. They probably weren't, but in my mind, that's what I was seeing. I was like, oh, I got to check this out, man.
They're just like, cannons look cool. We're just gonna put cannons on the front because it's metal now.
Play music, shoot cannons.
I think the first interview we did, which was, I think at this point over a year ago, you had mentioned then that you were going to be working maybe possibly on a solo record. And from what you told me, I'm assuming that that's come to fruition a little bit. So, you know, what stage are you at in that? And how has it been being able to kind of be creative under your own discretion and not have to work with other band members per se to kind of go to a certain vision, but kind of just work towards your vision and what you have been wanting to do?
Well, first off, last time we were talking, I was working on it and I was in the middle of it. And I think I kind of finished one record's worth of songs right around the beginning of this year. But I've held off on when to release it and how to release it because I'm kind of just waiting to see when it might make sense to tour on it, to go out and support it.
Right.
For me, I really want the opportunity to release my own solo record and tour on it. You know, even if I can only open for certain bands or whatever it is, you know, I definitely want to go out there and support it and build a fan base that way. I know it's an okay time now because everyone's in and kind of looking for things to do on the net. And, you know, you can reach more people on the net than you ever could before because that's the only place they can go for entertainment right now. So I know it's a kind of an okay time that way, but for this record, I put so much effort into it. I kind of just really want to wait and, see if it comes back around where I can go. I think I'm going to have a decent fan base in Europe. So I don't want to have to leave Europe out. I want to wait till travel is really free with all that. As far as writing goes, writing's my favorite thing. I mean, I can wake up and go to sleep and wake up in the middle of the night all the time writing. No problem. I mean, I like it. It's just really hard to organize it all the time when you have all these ideas flying around, you know, because everything I write wouldn't work on a St. John record, you know, because it took shape, and I can't really tell you what the shape is, but it's probably got flavors of, surprisingly for me anyway, of early GNR and kind of Zeppelin 3 to Houses of the Holy, like something in there. Like it's got some of those influences. I can't say that there's any particular songs that something might sound like, but it's got that heaviness to it. And I found another sort of aggressive area in my voice that I really hadn't used that much that was just really working for these songs that I was writing. And, you know, it's got a little bit of that punk to it that Axl was doing, you know, back on the early GNR stuff. You know, it's a lot younger sounding of a record, I think, than a lot of the stuff I've been singing on in the last, you know, 5-10 years, really. You know, some really nice pieces that are quite musical and not just the straight up regular, oh, I got my ballad and I got my danceable rocker. You know, it's got a lot of stuff on it, a lot of movement, and, you know, what you might expect from a guy who's got a lot of classical influences, you know, with a lot of timing and rhythm, I want to say, capabilities. I think because I was a percussionist, I studied percussion from a young age, from elementary school. My first tour was as a timpanist and a percussionist, and I did a lot of competition. So I studied a lot of rhythms and had to be able to play a lot of changing rhythms and changing time signatures and all that stuff on the spot. So I think in my rock stuff, I don't want to be progressive and technical, and it's just not my thing. To be that way. I'm not a prog rock kind of guy, but I feel like in a way, some of the bands we mentioned, you know, like the Beatles and Zeppelin, they did do a lot of time feel changes and time signature changes that are maybe not as prominent in music these days, or, you know, throughout the 80s and 90s that I love. And, you know, myself, along with the guys I'm working with, we managed to get some really nice movements and pieces in these songs. You know, what can you say about something that's an original piece of music that you're not playing for someone yet, except that it's cool and I can't wait for you to check it out?
Yeah, is there anybody we may know that is playing on the record, or is this more of a you and just kind of like some friends that you have coming in to play with you, or is it just you?
Up to this point, there are certain decisions that haven't been made yet, and I've had a few different people on different instruments play things, and as we've been demoing things up, and there are definitely people, you know, all you guys know on this record, but the one guy that I would like to mention is the guitar player happens to be the guy that joined my band St. John when I first moved to LA.
Oh, wow.
And I only came out here, I mean, I had money behind me, I had a company behind me already, management and a label and whatnot, and they were kind of brought me out here from New York. And I really didn't know anything about the whole rock scene and didn't really know what it meant that I was going to LA or any of that. But I got out here and I had a drummer with me from New York, and we had to audition guitar players. So at that time, it was still a sort of band factory here in LA. So there were people to go to that had these file cabinets. You could give them whatever, you gave them $100, and you could go through their file cabinet and take out all these folders of these promotional packages that guys from all over the world sent to LA, and guys from LA had them there. And you know, there's just kind of word out on the street that there's these 2 or 3 people who have all the strings and connections to all the available players, you know. And so I found this guy, Brent Barker is his name, and stellar player, just classical chops up the ass, rock chops up the ass, you know, everything you could say. You know, he kind of had a real, at that time, he was kind of like a mixture of Randy Rhoads and Brian May kind of a thing. Wasn't really too bluesy, which I had a bluesy edge, but, you know, he got on it. And for whatever reason, that band, you know, kind of broke up because we all got starstruck with other stuff we were getting into. And he kind of just left town, and he got married and got a corporate job and had kids. And all that time, and I won't say how many years, and all that time, he kept studying guitar, and he kept doing things like a little 3-piece blues band together. And he told me when we finally met each other umpteen years later, again, he said, yeah, you know, I'm quitting my corporate job, and I've been playing guitar and studying all this time. I've studied these blues, I studied those blues. I lived in St. Louis for a little while and played with all these old blues guys and all these things. So he came up one day to the place because he lives in Arizona now, and we just tried a few different ideas. I was like, let's just go, man. Let's just make 24 hours available, and we'll sit in the studio here at the house and just see what happens. And, you know, right away we had, you know, 5 or 10 ideas right off the bat that 2 or 3 of those probably wound up on the record. And it's just a breath of fresh air to work with a guy I haven't even seen in all these years. We were friendly back then. We were good friends. We had a good energy and a good chemistry. We have a great, easy chemistry now. He treats it like it's my record. this thing. And, so from me to answer one of your questions, it's really easy. I don't really get much pushback. If I bring something up and want to try something, he'll try it.
Right.
Like anything I want to try, he'll just try it. And the thing about this guy is, I swear, I mean, a lot of people say this about a lot of players, but anything in my imagination that I can think of that I want him to try, he'll find it, and at least we'll try it and see if it worked, and he's happy to do it. And, he's still got some of that Brian May meets Randy Rhoads, but, there's a lot of other stuff now from all these years of his study and not necessarily experience on the road or making albums with bands, but he's stayed into music and he's never put the guitar down,
Well, it's great because there's pros to working with somebody for a long time. And, you've worked with a bunch of different players over your career that you've worked with time and time again. And that must be great because you guys have obviously developed some kind of chemistry and the way each of you work. But it must also be really great to just introduce somebody else's style that you're not used to working with. You've worked with so many different players and, obviously it's great to have chemistry and a connection you've built with each other. But, to have somebody new come in that you haven't worked with in years that has had a completely different musical journey than you and, hasn't been touring and writing albums constantly and trying to think of new songs and ideas. And you know what I mean? I think that must be kind of refreshing to have, as part of your process.
It is. And I didn't expect it. You don't really expect a guy that hasn't, been paying their dues and like really, doing the circuit in the industry, after playing with a lot of guitar greats like Ronnie and George and Doug, Tracy, I mean, just like, and many more, Manny Charlton and all these guitar icons. I was really, really, really pleasantly surprised and really stoked that, Brent, he can hold his own. He can come up and get on a deck and play guitar next to any of these guys and hold his own, in his own style, which is really cool. Ronnie Montrose remembered we get so many guitar players. I've gotten to jam with so many guys that I haven't jammed with before that are way through the roof of players. So, when Brent showed up, and I was like, wow, maybe I couldn't get this guy over here in my band, but I get Brent. And wow, is he good?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really excited to hear it whenever it comes out. And I mean, honestly, about it being a good time now, I mean, I'd almost debate that even waiting is a little bit better because right now it's a welcome saturation, but there is such an oversaturation of content that's being put out and released because everyone's doing it. So, I mean, I would definitely say that waiting a little bit probably is a good idea, even though it does seem like the time is right now, per se.
Yeah, I know. And also, not for nothing, but maybe it's just me. I get a little bit of an inkling that the fans, they want to be helpful to the music community. Not for nothing. I want to have honest fans that are like, they're truly digging and coming out just for that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, it's something you've worked on, you thought about for a while, you finally put it together, I totally understand wanting to kind of have the full experience instead of here it is, you can stream now, and that's the end of it, I mean, I totally get that. But something that I always like to bring up, because you just mentioned St. John, which was, the band that you had back when you moved to LA, is the band Big Trouble. And I really want to know, have you heard those songs? I really have always wanted to hear that album because my good friend Tommy Henriksen is also on that record, and
yes.
Nobody knows about this project, and I want to hear those songs so badly. Have you heard them in years, or do you not have access to them either?
I have somewhere in a storage, I have a bunch of boxes like yay big from top to bottom with no organization or just filled with cassette tapes. Because back in the day, everybody's demo and everything you did was being passed around on cassette tapes.
Right.
Still, when I first got to LA, 52nd Street, the big cassette tape manufacturer that everybody used, was still going and still pumping them out even when CDs were out. It was like, but somewhere in those boxes, there are some Big Trouble tunes. Maybe not the whole record, but there are a few tunes in there just from demo sections. The producer handed me something on the way out the door and going, okay, for the ride home, you have this to listen to. Maybe it wasn't the mixed songs, but close.
Yeah, I feel like just nobody knows about that project, and I'm like, I want to know what it sounded like because the album was never released. Like, it was just about to be put out, and you guys were kind of just on the cusp of releasing it, and things kind of went a different direction. But I've always just been curious because you guys, I think that was in '89, right? So you guys were still kind of in that LA '80s scene. I've always wondered what it sounds like. So if you ever find them,
Okay.
feel free to send them my way because I've
Well,
always
nudge me if you don't hear back from me on it. Nudge me every once in a while because there's so much going on. I'm like the nutty professor here that if you don't give me a little like, hey, I might forget. But I would love to hear that stuff too. And on a note, since you just said that, 5 days ago, the guitar player from that band sent me a canvas for a song with the music. The day he sent it to me, I created a whole vocal because I was feeling it. So just one sitting in an hour, had a song together that I liked, and I sent it back to him, and he loves it. And you might know him, John Levin.
John, I love that guy.
He's the guitar player from Big Trouble. John and Tommy, and Bobby was the drummer, and Bobby Rondinelli. And John and I had done some writing last year, but he is also a lawyer and a busy lawyer. So, he's been kind of busy, and when he wasn't busy, I was busy. But then all of a sudden, like I said, 4 days ago, he sent me a new song out of the blue. And he said, hey, I just recorded this, Keith. Let me send it to you. See what you think. I said, okay. And I sent it right back. So now that project might be on a heater again. We'll see.
Yeah, get the Big Trouble reunion when we didn't even have the album.
Right?
But maybe we finally will get Tommy.
That would be cool.
That would be really cool.
I can't tell you who the original. There are some guys that committed to be the rhythm section on this thing, and they're a rhythm section, a drummer, bass player from a big band. But that would actually be cool to actually have Tommy and Bobby play this stuff with us, and maybe
you should make it happen. I'm sure Tommy right now. He's constantly working. You should get it together because I think that's something that at least you'd have one person listening, and I'm sure many, many more. So yeah, that's awesome.
Well, we'd have some Long Island people for sure.
Oh, yes.
Sure.
Oh, yes.
You know what about Tommy's history in Long Island, and that's where I grew up. And Tommy's a great producer. We wouldn't even have to hire a producer.
He mixed the entire. So it was the last Hollywood Vampires record. He did the entire thing. He's just amazing. He's somebody else who's just talent after talent after talent after talent. He just amazing. But I would love to see you guys get that together. I think that's crazy that John just sent you that song.
Yeah,
things are just connecting. You're right.
If I had it here, I'd play a little snippet of it right now. Damn.
Well, and all in due time.
Next one. It's good stuff. John's a great player, and he's been writing for Dokken for a long time, and been in Dokken a long time, and since George split. And people don't really know what his writing is like outside of that. Because when you're writing for a band that has a sound, you're specifically
writing for the sound,
crafting something for that purpose. But John really, like I mentioned Free earlier. And he's come up with some riffs. I said, man, John, if Free would have stayed together another 5 years, this would have been a hit song for them. This is like what Paul Kossoff and those guys never got to. This is really cool shit. So, I'm happy to see where that goes. And maybe, we could actually play on it when playing comes around again, too, because he's a fun guy to play live with as well.
I've loved John's stuff with Dokken over the years. I think that don't get me wrong, I love George Lynch so much. George is such a special place in my heart, but I think that John, he has done those songs justice so well over the years, and he's contributed his own to Dokken. But like you said, I feel like I haven't heard too much of what John, has done outside of that. So I would, definitely be looking forward to hearing some tunes from him, out of that kind of style and the Dokken-esque sound, that he's been playing in for over a decade. So
I know the album, hopefully a vinyl, would at least get one full spin.
On my turntable, at least.
Right on. I can pre-distress it out for you so it fits in with those.
Yeah, just rip it up a little bit, sand it a little bit.
Exactly. Well, we'll send it to a pro.
So one thing I always do on my podcast at the end of every episode is I like to ask the same 5 questions because I feel like everybody just has such different answers for these, and I think that they're so interesting. Some of them are music related, some of them are not. They're 5 questions. You can answer them fast if you want. You can think about them if you want. They're not rapid fire. A lot of people get really I don't know. They're not rapid fire. You can answer them at your own pace. All right. So the first question is, if you weren't working in the profession that you're currently in, so vocalist, songwriter, producer, what would you be doing?
Also have to eliminate face mask manufacturer because I'm
already done that one.
Right. As a kid, and even in my college days, I was seriously into math and science.
Really?
And physics. I was like AP everything. Advanced placement, physics, math, all that stuff. So, I went to engineering school, and a pretty competitive one. And I think if I wasn't doing what we just said I'm doing, I think I have to get back into the sciences somehow. I don't know how I would accomplish that. I don't really have a resume built up to do that. Like my resume, if I wanted to do per se a straight job, like I could maybe go be a video editor or mix sound for a post company or something for film and TV or something like that. But if I could, and if I had my druthers, I wouldn't mind being in a lab somewhere trying to help the world out in some way.
That's so interesting because I feel like so many artistic people, including myself, and I'm terrible at math. I feel like I talk to so many people. I've always kind of been like, oh, you're artistic, you must suck at that. But I think it's so interesting that that's like what you were great in and you're great in. That's so cool because I feel like so many artistic people really kind of lack in that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Composition wise for songwriting, math and numbers and just a mathematical mind and
Works
geometrical. I mean, to compose music, it works really well together. I think there's something connected in there. But as far as, the rest of the concepts and the sciences, the theory of relativity and all that stuff, maybe, I don't know if all the artist people I know are that much into that. But for some reason, I wouldn't have gave you that answer last year, but I don't know. Right now, I just feel like that would be a little bit more of the type of contribution to humanity that I could segue out of being a musical artist into that and feel comfortable with myself.
That's an awesome answer, though. It was definitely not one I was expecting. The second question is, what is something that you wish everybody knew about you?
Wow.
Do you have a hidden talent?
You took some time to think these up.
Do you have a hidden talent? Do you, I don't know, what's something that nobody knows?
Well, there's something that maybe, I kind of always had a laissez-faire attitude with what people think of me. It's like, I hate to say it, but I almost completely don't give a shit, but I mean, I really give a shit about people a lot. But if someone forms a negative opinion, I kind of look at it as their problem or whatever, I don't know. But, maybe I'm an egotistical schmuck. I have no idea. But if there was part of me that I wish I could share with more people and more of the world, there's things that I learned about my empathetic kind of spiritual side from an older Japanese guy that I spent like 20 years of my life being really close friends with. And he was an amazing energy harnesser. And because he could harness energy from the universe and he had a crazy vision, and I don't really know how this came to him other than he had a death experience. He died and came back when he was younger. And he said it changed his sight, but he still always had this other power to manipulate energy. And he decided after that happened, in his early 20s to use that energy to heal people. And I saw him do it. And that's how I met him. I had this guru lady I knew in West Hollywood said, oh, the only guy I know who could fix that for you is this guy. And she hooked me up. She was like one of those witchy kind of closet people that, wore rags and no one ever knew where she lived or anything. And kind of it's like a movie. It really is. I could have a movie written about that part of my life. And I think it'd be pretty interesting. So I met this guy, and for some reason, he always told me that I could do what he does. He became friends with me. And he didn't really have any other friends so much except older guys from Japan that he knew from there. So he started teaching me stuff at a certain point in our relationship, maybe after knowing him for 4 or 5 years. And I wish what I saw and what I've experienced physically, learning about the spiritual world and learning about the reality of how connected we are to the universe in a different way through other powers in our brain that we've forgotten about. I wish some of those experiences were just on a movie and I could say here, or on a reality video and say, look what happened. Because it's also life-changing. It changes the whole game. For anybody that says there's nothing out there, you live, you die, that's it. Even if I was saying that back then, I mean, I have 1,000 billion% positive proof over and over and over again that that's not the case. Whether, there's different religions and they have their beliefs and stuff, but then there's just kind of spirituality and knowing that there's other stuff besides the 5 senses.
No, I believe in all that type of stuff. I've always feel like, especially over the years, I've gotten definitely more spiritual, and I just even things being connected to the universe and the law of attraction and things like that, and the way you think is the reality that you'll bring into your reality and things like that. So I definitely 100% know what you're talking about. It's undeniably real.
It absolutely is. It is. And the thing is, the thing that kills most people as kids growing up, you know, they have fears or insecurities or question. Whether they can do it or not is a question. And, you know, the kids who are lucky enough to never think maybe I won't make it, there are certain kids that never think that ever. And they always make it. Whether even if the jump's too far for them to make it, they'll make it. You know, it's just there's something in the brain that controls a lot more physical matter than we realize.
I've seen it happen to so many people, and even sometimes myself. There's a documentary on Netflix. It's called The Secret, and it's like a perfect explanation to that entire thing. And that's just even one small part of it. That's not even the entire, you know, pie. So no, I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah, if you could just show that to people, the world would be such a different place. It would just
absolutely
be so different. But yeah, I love that answer. That was, again, not what I was expecting. Full of unexpected answers.
Absolutely. If we had the time and I could tell you even 2 or 3 of those stories of what happened, it'd just be like, you know, really? I guess, you know, that qualifies for an answer for your question. That's a part of me I just wish I could share.
So the third question is, if you were stranded on a desert island and you only had 3 records to bring with you to listen to, what would they be? This is the hardest question, I swear.
Only 3. Does a double record count as one or no?
Yes, that will count.
Technically, that's
I
more.
Will allow
right.
that.
Okay. Damn, that's hard. They need to be pretty different, like from different things and different moods. Freaking impossible, Sid. There's so many great records. And then once I pick 3, I'm going to be like, oh, wait, I wish I had those. Okay. This is a little bit of a cheat, but as the first record, I'll take the blue greatest hits double collection from the Beatles.
That counts. I will allow that to count. Yes.
The red one's the earliest one that has the I Want to Hold Your Hand and stuff, but the blue one I think has the Strawberry Fields and I Am the Walrus and all that.
I have that on vinyl actually. Yes, the blue album.
Yeah. So I'll take that one. Wow. What did you pick?
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't done it. School's Out's got to be in that one for you, no? Okay.
Actually, I'd probably say the Alice Cooper album I chose is From the Inside. That one is, I'd say it's my favorite record of all time. So that's probably the one that I know would definitely be in there. And the other 2 for me are a mystery.
I almost want like a variety album of, like there were albums, like there was an album it was just called Heavy Metal. That was a double record from the early 70s that actually had I'm 18 on it. And it's got a Sabbath track and it's probably got a Zeppelin track and it's got a this and a that. I'd have to look up the name of one of those kind of albums so I could get I could cheat this question and get a variety anyway. I'm thinking of records and I'm like, no, I'll get sick of that in a week because I'm such a variety guy. You know?
I love watching people stumble over this question. It's the one question that everybody's like,
especially music people, they're into so many different styles, right?
Yeah, it's the one question that everybody, I think I did David Ellefson and he answered like that. He was the only person I feel like that was just like,
wow. I feel like Tracy might answer that pretty quick. Whenever I ask him questions about his influences and his favorites, he just rattles them. Maybe Zeppelin 2. We'll just go totally in the other direction because it's a little bit more raw. And then the bluesy stuff just, you know, will put you in a trance, you know, and that's kind of cool. Maybe Zeppelin 2, the Beatles Blue record, and you know what's a great songwriter's record is that Bridge Over Troubled Water record.
That is a good one. That's a nice variety too. You'll have you have a little bit of everything. I think that's a good answer. I
want some heavier stuff because I really do, you know, get off, but I don't know. I'm kind of, when I'm not writing or recording like for my own head, I listen to mellower stuff.
I think that's an acceptable answer though. Like I said, you have a little bit of everything. And with the Beatles album, it's all of their hits.
Well, I said that one. I know some people probably said Sgt. Pepper's, you know, probably as their answer because that's a big iconic Beatles record, right? Or Abbey Road.
Yeah, I mean,
like Abbey Road.
But I feel like the Blue album, you kind of get a little taste of everything.
Another Beatles thing that might be interesting to have is, I can't remember what they called them, but they have a Beatles thing, which is sort of a progressive making of some of the songs. They put out a series of CDs, of records, and they're this collection where you hear the sort of the inception of the idea. Maybe it's just Lennon and a guitar sitting in the corner going, no one I think is in my tree. I mean, it must be high or low. Like he's not even close. And all he's got is that. And from there, with Paul McCartney and George Martin, they keep building the song and re-recording parts because they have infinite time to take to do it. And they have infinite resources with any orchestra on the planet they want. And so they just keep on trying things and they show you what they did to finally, eventually get all the way back to that intro where it's flutes going, yep, 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 ba-da-da, ba-da, ba-da, bum, ba, da, 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 da. It's got the cello and all this. So by the 50th take, they get that, it's a very interesting collection. You would appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that. I'll have to look that up and check that out, because to see like the progression of a Beatles song, I feel like is just
Especially those
perfect.
era songs.
Yeah, that's like irreplaceable. Like it's shit nobody else would have thought of. So no, I'll have to check that out. But I think you came up with good answers, and hopefully you'll never be stranded on a desert island. So number 4 is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Ooh, well, maybe something like this, and I'll have to be pretty candid on this. Life is going to have many, many important relationships in it. And in some parts of life, it may feel like you just want to ride the roller coaster and see where it goes. Don't. Keep your eyes open around the first couple of curves and drive the coaster or jump off it as soon as you realize in which kind of direction it's heading, if that makes any sense. I mean, it's easy advice, and I think probably any parent should give that to their kid, right? But I think as, especially you're living kind of more of an artist life, you have a tendency, I think, to, in a lot of things, in your personal relationships and in your working relationships with people, to let things play out, and you're part of them and you play out with it. And I think it's a good piece of advice to, while the thing's playing out, take a break, get outside of the submarine and look around at the ocean and, get a perspective on where you're at.
Be aware.
Yeah.
Active participant.
Yeah.
In your life.
Because I've done that a lot. Just like wave rolled in, I caught it, and I'm like, oh, I'm just riding this wave, man. It's cool.
Yeah, I think that happens to everybody though in some sort of capacity. But I think to be aware and be present in your life and to really evaluate certain things is definitely, and that applies to anything, you know what I mean? Like in any facet of your life.
Absolutely. And it's typical. I don't know if you're into sun signs and horoscopes and all that stuff.
I am. I use the excuse that I'm a Scorpio for a lot. So
I'm a triple fire sign, a grand trine across the fires. So fire people notoriously act great in the moment. We're great at fixing anything in the moment. Like just throw us into a fire and we'll put it out, but notoriously bad at organizing and planning the road. We learned that. I know now, and I manage a lot of things and help a lot of other people manage their shit. But, that took a lot of learning and a lot of like banging heads to get there.
So the last question is probably the most fun question, is if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh gosh. So there's no combo superpower like I can be invisible and fly. Let's see. So because it's going to be one of those, right? Does immortality count as a superpower?
I would say so. I think that counts.
Okay. Yeah, Superman was immortal, right? George Reeves wasn't, but...
I really wonder I'm not sure if he was immortal, but I mean, I would say that that's a superpower.
All right, let's do immortality, but I have to put a stipulation in there that I don't know what age it would be, but I wouldn't want to get older than a certain age.
Yeah, you have to be.
I'm immortal at 22.
But yeah, no, I love this conversation. It's been great to have you on the podcast. I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy listening to this, and I'm excited to hear about all the music that you're going to have coming out shortly. Hopefully you'll be able to tour with the new album whenever that's released. But yeah, no, it's been great having you on the podcast. I always enjoy when we chat. So thank you for coming on.